For everyone that's been with us throughout the day, we've had our first Q&A panels for all of the speakers that you've heard up until this point in the event. But this next panel is a very special one. So I know a lot of individuals and executives that are at the event are trying to tackle a whole bunch of topics that may feel disconnected and all roll up into a higher level of security. So on this panel, we're covering AI security beyond the model, and this is what executives need to protect before scaling AI. So I'd like to introduce everyone that is on the panel today. We have a range of experts, and I'll start off with Rob Broadhead, who is with RB Consulting and the Developerpreneur podcast. Rob is moderating the panel today. We have Dave, so welcome, Rob.
Nice to be here. Thanks a lot.
Next, we have Dave Archer. He is the CTO and co-founder of Niobium. And Dave is joining us. Welcome, Dave.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Next, we have Melissa Jenner. She is with Acvo AI. And Melissa, welcome to the panel. And finally, we have Brad Micklea. He is the CEO over at Jozu. Welcome to the panel, Brad.
Thank you. Looking forward to it.
So just to get things kicked off, I'm going to hand the mic over to Rob to get the conversation going, and we'll take it from there.
Sounds good. Thanks a lot. I think the best place to start is we'll go around the table, as it were, and we'll start with the first question. Where do executives underestimate AI security risk? And I think we'll start this one with Dave.
I can think of a couple of points. I mean, I'm going to avoid talking about the security of the model because that's a different animal. But the main worry I have is what you expose when you talk to the model. Obviously, it's sort of an obvious thought, but we tend to want to assume that I type something in and the model doesn't learn from it. Maybe you trust that, maybe you don't. But there's also a host of other angles where what you're typing in can be revealed, right? Think of it as insider threats at the LLM provider. And people are working there, they have full access. Your data is decrypted. It's even if it's TLS protected on the network, it's decrypted so it can be processed through the LLM. It's decrypted so that the LLM and the AI around it can do things with it, can search the web for you, can make travel arrangements for you, can do whatever it needs to do. That exposes your data for everyone to see who's in that provider company. So if that's happening, you have to ask the question, do you trust them? Do you trust they have no insider threats this week? Hard to say. So I worry about that, exposing that content, and do you really trust, or can you really trust your AI provider?
Yeah, that's that's the thing, is that AI security goes beyond I think everybody jumps to the hardware and the basic sides of it, as opposed to, it's like directly moving data around, but there's a lot more to it. Melissa, how about you?
Yeah, can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Oh, great. Hi, everyone. Yeah, from my perspective, I approach this, I run a business that integrates AI applications primarily into the people and culture side of the business. So I get a look into how people are integrating technology with people's jobs and roles. And I think the risk that I'm seeing is that it's not really about the model that you choose or the tool that you choose or the app. It's actually confidence, right? So there's a lot of research that I've been following recently, which says that up to 90% of people believe they have visibility into how AI is being used in their organization. And yet more than half of people admit to using AI tools without any approval. So I think what we've got is not really a technology. I mean, I think there's better people on here to talk about security from a technology perspective. But from where I sit and what I'm seeing is that it's a self-perception failure at the organizational level. So, for example, does the organization actually have confidence that they know what people are using, what tools people are using, what they're using them for, and an accurate read on what capability is actually being built, what capability or productivity is being built. Because the research at the moment is saying that there's no systems or executive reporting coming back that's clearly articulating that. So, if leadership doesn't know what's actually going on the ground, how does a security model kind of secure that? That would be my starting point.
Yeah, I mean, I
That's it.
couldn't agree with Melissa more. No, actually, I'd take it even a step further. I think the one thing people forget, because we tend to kind of anthropomorphize AI, is that the types of controls that we used when humans were the primary actor, we were really trying to govern what do humans do with the data, what do humans do with the actions, were those policies. They would write policies, you read them, you were trained on them every year, you had to be able to answer a quiz about them. If you didn't get the quiz right, you had to go do the training again. And it works. I mean, it gets people to really internalize kind of what those policies are. When you're talking about AI, even more so when you talk about agentic AI or AI agents, which is what actually people are really starting to use en masse, it doesn't matter if the human understands what the policy is. You need a machine enforceable, 100% deterministic policy that actually exists at that compute layer. If you don't have it there, then a good intentioned human is on the wrong side of the actions being taken. So I think that's the part that people miss. And it's exactly what Melissa said. You can think your organization is here and you write a policy for that. If your organization is already doing agentic, which by the way, I can almost guarantee you they are, then it's too late. You're not actually reacting to that reality.
I agree with that same sentiment. The whole idea of guardrails for the agents, right, is not well understood yet. We can impose guardrails on the humans and they will abide by them, or generally, they're well intentioned. But the agents, we don't have a good framework for guardrails, I would claim. So we don't quite know where that information goes or when it gets used for what, unless you go inspect the code of each agent. Right?
I think that's what that's the interesting thing about, we talk about it with AI as part of the question, but you could take AI out of the question and you still have the same problems. I think Melissa really nailed it. It comes back to organization and the people themselves. And I love your point about, we put guardrails for agents, but humans blow by guardrails all the time. And sometimes with reason. That's part of the whole challenge, is that humans will do that and they will correct something when there's a guardrail that should be ignored for a specific business reason. Then as a human we can do that, but if an AI agent does it, we call it a hallucination, because it's sticking to the guardrail where all of us maybe would say, no, we don't have to do that. So it's really interesting that it's not the technology, it comes back to the organization, and the people that run it are really where the problems are, or where the potential issues are, and where the potential security leaks are.
And I think everyone that's on the call today is in the same space. Everyone is learning. There are so many moving parts, and with all of these different inputs and MCP agents and servers and automated logins from all over the place, it's really getting unwieldy. And I think a lot of times it comes down to some foundational structure on the idea of what Melissa was suggesting at the outset.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's one of the things that it's changing so rapidly, and everybody's sort of trying to hit a moving target, which leads me to the next question. Is we'll start with Brad this time. And this is going to be maybe a tough one. What is the biggest misconception people have, particularly businesses with AI and security?
So I think the biggest misconception I see, talking to enterprises, regulated industries, governments, I think a lot of people, again, for the same reason, they think of AI agents as like a human. And so they're the obvious answer, it feels like the obvious answer is, Well, I've got an identity provider. That identity provider enforces role-based limits for each of my human employees.
Mhm.
So Alice in finance can do certain things, and Frank in legal can do certain things, but they can't do things in each other's worlds. Great. I'm just going to do that. I'm going to put an identity like that and a role on each of my agents, and everything will be fine. The problem is that agents don't behave that way. And in fact, the power of the agent is that it doesn't behave that way. The whole power of the agent for me is that I can have it analyze some financial data, create a presentation as though it was a marketer, and then tell me how that impacts strategy like a business leader. If I take that away from people, then I'm taking away a lot of the value of the AI for them. They'll find a way around it. They will go to the shadow AI. They'll be like, no, this is not really helping me as much. I'm going to go to this other AI thing that my buddy told me was so great that is completely unvetted and probably not appropriate for my company's data. So I think that there's this belief that, hey, we've got the security systems in place. We just need to apply them to AI. And the reality is we don't. We have to use them. Yes, of course, they are part of the solution. But there are both new tools and controls that are needed for AI. And more importantly, there's a sense of cohesiveness in that security framework, which matters far more with AI because of the speed that it operates, because of the lack of oversight that it kind of demands, that we didn't have with humans. And you need that continuity, because if there is one thing that breeds risk and mistakes and attacks and danger, it is the seams between the security control points. So identity is great, data loss prevention is great, but there is a gap between those, and that's where the mistakes, that's where the risk, that's where the attacks will tend to focus. So you need something more holistic in the case of agents.
Can I make a comment on this one?
Yeah.
So I for my sins, I used to work in banking, and I think banks are probably the institutions that have invested the most in compliance and security, arguably, in the past, right? How many companies do you know right now, broadsheet, across all of them, have a risk and compliance function? I would say very, very few. And what I'm seeing and what the research is telling us is that people are outsourcing this to their providers. So there's no intermediation or separation from providers and a neutral risk and compliance function that sits inside the company. And banks are really, really good at this, and they've been doing it for decades. And they separate tasks, functions, oversight, and suppliers through risk and compliance models. And, there's a really interesting study that came out this year from Grant Thornton, AI Impact Study, which you might want to have a look at. And 50% of people are saying this is a compliance problem, but yet only 11% of people have a risk and compliance function. So, I mean, we're kind of like expecting these organizations that are providing the LLMs, who, by the way, are only 5 or 6 or 7 years old, who are still making it up as they're going. We've sort of outsourced trust to them. And I think what we need to do is we need to rapidly start bringing into all levels of all organizations somebody who understands risk and compliance, because they're different. One identifies, one ring fences and manages the processes around it. And I think we need accountable leaders inside every organization. With some of the issues you were raising earlier, how do we know what our customers are seeing? Agents can be changed with the flick of a switch. The access points are really open. So I think we're sitting on a landmine, is my opinion, from what I'm seeing, and I'd love to hear what you think.
I'd extend that. There's an emerging, as agentic AI emerges, what's happening too fast in some sense, right, to keep track of is related to compliance, and that's auditability, because it's not just one agent has this data and is going to do things with an LLM and make decisions. Frameworks of agents are trading information pretty freely, right? They have to do their job. We have no idea where that information goes, right? It percolates through this network of agents that interrelate, without a human in any of those loops sometimes. And there's no auditability function to at least understand whether we're compliant or not, much less enforce. So that's where I think the current frameworks are moving faster than our ability to keep up and know what's happening.
And just to throw in, maybe from an executive standpoint, I think a lot of executives are feeling pressure, especially at the enterprise level, from a competitive standpoint, to get solutions out there incorporating AI live quickly because our competitor has something. But at the same point, following protocols, traditional from years past, SDLC, compliance and life cycles and a lot of the metrics that need to be in place before launching a tool. Yet on the other end of it, we have all of these new unknown AI, tools and agents and servers as attack vectors that didn't exist before in a previous world. So it's being pressured from both ends. And I think, a lot of organizations are, being asked, do we take shortcuts or do we, focus on the compliance we need to roll out?
Well, and I think there's some good news here, which is that I think that dichotomy, which definitely existed in the past, is a bit of a false dichotomy now. I think the technology has moved far enough that, like, certainly what we focus on at Jozu is we've created a set of technology and a platform that actually allows people to have that security and compliance that they need, that auditability, but operate at a speed as though they didn't think about it, because it is all automated underneath. And that automation is kind of what saves you. That's what gets you out of that impossible, rock in a hard place problem, because how do you go fast but go slow? You can't go fast and go slow at the same time. You could automate the security and compliance part, and that allows you to go fast at the adoption part. So.
But I think you still end up running into which is the challenge here is you've got, I think what AI is giving you is giving you a better view of what your organization's strengths and weaknesses are at this point, because you're going faster. So the things that are as Michael referred to them, as you have all these attack vectors, but honestly, you have all those attack vectors, but you still have the same core, vulnerabilities that those things are getting to. And so if you can get the core vulnerabilities straightened out, then it doesn't matter how many attack vectors you have. The interesting thing is these are the same problems we've actually had to deal with, with people for 20 or 30 years or more, is you can have these agents sharing information, and we're now realizing we need to know when an agent shares information with another agent that it does that. We need to have some sort of logging and audit trails to know, how does this data move around, what's doing what and where and when and why and how. But we've had human beings doing this for quite a while as well. We've all heard of shadow spreadsheets, and there's Bob in accounting, no offense to Bob, but that like is doing some extra work here and there to make things work, as opposed to it actually following some sort of SOP or something along those lines. I think what we're seeing here is the same issues and problems we had, as Melissa sort of pointed out, that everybody worries about compliance, but then if they don't have a plan for it, well, worrying about it doesn't help it. So I think we're running into, once again, technology is actually, it may be helping us do things faster, but it's also showing some of those cracks and some of those weaknesses within our organizations quicker as well.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't think the threat service has changed all that much. The threat service has moved to a space where the speed is much faster, and the agents don't have, let's say, the discrimination power that a human does to make decisions about sharing information.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Melissa.
Oh, sorry. It's tricky to jump in, isn't it? I think so. There's two things that humans are really good at, right? One is most humans are creative, and all humans are fundamentally lazy. It's a paradox, right? And what we've got going on right now, from my perspective, is we've got a lot of agents and organizations solving vicious friction, right? Where basically, if we can take away this friction point, everyone's happy, right? So it's the easy blocks. It's the where humans wouldn't really normally get involved. They might be clicking a switch or so. Because we're lazy and because AI agents can come in and fix the vicious friction and can take away, you know, the jobs that we don't love to do, the non-creative, they're not interesting. That's I think where we take our eyes off the ball, right? But there's another type of workflow that people get creative around, and that's virtuous friction where humans are involved, right? And so in the HR space, recruitment or performance management, or where you can't just put in an agent and take away the problem, you've actually got to involve people. People start getting creative. They'll build their little workflows around it. And I think that's the really interesting. A lot of the agents at the moment are solving, you know, this vicious friction. Let's just fix the stuff that humans don't want to do. But actually, when we start getting into things that are a little bit more complex and there are human workflows, they'll start making their own workarounds. They're particularly creative when it comes to, you know, these tools. So I think eyes on everything. And I actually think, whilst I said earlier, I think we need to put a risk and compliance function in. This has also got to be a leadership skill now. Everybody who's managing people has to have eyes on, you know, what are people creating workarounds for, and is there any kind of compliance around that? I think leadership's going to shift to being, you know, doing much more looking at the creativity and the virtuous nature in which people will naturally create workarounds if we let them, which can be a good thing, right? Can be a really good thing. But it depends on how savvy they are around what they're reading with the tech.
And I'll just throw in, I think a lot of individual organizations have come to learn over the last few months and years. Shadow AI is a real thing, and not making a decision is making a decision in and of itself. So I think a lot of these guardrails, if they're not put into place, can be as much of a challenge as, you know, as not.
Yeah, this is where you want to get ahead of it. You definitely want to get ahead of it a little bit before you suddenly have all those shadow systems that, and now you're trying to figure out where they are and how to wrangle them back into organization. So I think one of the things, before we leave with everybody saying, "Oh my gosh, what are we going to do?" I think next question is, so what's something that executives should do next week? So Monday morning when they come in, what's something they can do or should be doing to help them in this? To move forward in this, to maybe get ahead of it. And I will start with Melissa this time.
I had to think about this. I think I'm going to try and keep it as simple as possible. I would say to every leader, do a visibility audit. You know, that sounds hard. Essentially, it's intelligence gathering. It's not a discipline exercise. It's eyes on. So wherever you've got an AI tool or workflow, ask yourself, who's got eyes on the process? So an audit and, you know, information gathering, and put a human, while someone you trust, on every significant AI workflow, process map it, understand it, make sure a leader understands it deeply. So that's what I would suggest everyone starts doing.
Dave, how about you?
So I agree with exactly what Melissa said. Another thing I think you could do, take action on almost immediately, is to challenge your agentic deployment team. Go to them and say, all right, test challenge. Some information is leaked somewhere. I need to know where it came from. Show me, for all the different class of agents we have and the way they communicate, show me how I would know. I want to see the path of information flow here. Don't show me all of them, that's too much, but show me that you have a handle on these things and you could track it down if you had to. And if you can't do that, go do it, and then we'll figure out a way to deploy that process to look at all these things. Not maybe all the time, but every time we substantially revise our agentic system and expand it, we need to know that first.
Yeah, I think both of you have hit it on it. I'll kind of continue in the same vein. Is similarly to what you said, Dave. I think, again, the part that I keep seeing is those seams between kind of point tools or point solutions. That's where the attacks are coming. That's where the risk is coming.
Right.
And what I think is very common and natural for leaders is to say, okay, Dave's in charge of this point tool, and Melissa's the expert in that point tool, and Brad's the expert in this third point tool. You can't just do that now. You've got to also say, okay, who's responsible for the handoff between each point tool, and making sure that those handoffs maintain a level of security, and to your point, Dave, auditability.
Yeah.
And so I think it's, Melissa, you've absolutely hit it on the head with the kind of human aspect. Make sure you have leaders who actually understand what these things are doing.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, you're in big trouble. And then one level below that, maybe it's the engineering or the IT leaders say, hey, it's not just about the tools. It's about how do they connect, or do they connect? Because they probably don't.
And this is going to be hard. Recognize that this is hard. We've got to learn. We've got to put effort in. We're all fundamentally lazy people, and I think this is all new. New creates new work. So yeah, it's frustrating, but the rewards will be there if we put the effort in now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love the combination of Melissa and Brad, basically, because I think so often you see departmentally, well, they'll get it together and they'll know who owns what and who is responsible for what. So if you ask a department, if X goes wrong, who owns it? Where do we point the finger? And say, oh, Brad knows that. He's the one that's going to know. That's part of his job. The stuff that falls between the cracks are in those cracks between the departments, and even sometimes within one. It's where the handoff occurs, because so often, if I'm handing off to Brad he owns his part of it and I own my part of it, but nobody owns that the handoff actually occurred. And so if I drop the ball and Brad doesn't realize it, and I'm thinking he picked it up, well, suddenly you've had it fall through the cracks. So it's not just understanding the within a given departments and with your given silos, who owns what, but also within those handoffs. And I think that's where it goes to Dave's question, which is really interesting, because, okay, if that data, if some data got lost or was wrong somewhere in our system, I think the other side of that is who owns that? And particularly once you start throwing stuff into agents, it is who is actually not just the human in the loop, but who is the human that owns that is correct. Because if you're in the loop, you're just checking, you could end up rubber stamping things. Even you could just go through there. There's got to be somebody that owns it, that if it goes wrong or if it's bad, that's the person who's, for, in an extreme sense, that's whose job is on the line, essentially. Somebody has to own it, and it has to be a person. You can't just make it like, oh, it's the IT department, or it's sales or marketing. You've got to be able to track that down to a specific person, and that's the one that's going to be, able to actually, they're going to put that effort in. Sort of Melissa's thing. If I'm lazy, if it's not part of my job, then I don't really need to do it. So you sort of attack the lazy side of it by saying, well, no, this is actually part of your job.
Yeah.
Michael, your thoughts on that? I think you've been quiet on this one.
I think that, figuring out the next steps for a lot of organizations is sometimes, the hardest part. A lot of it is really, getting right foundation in place. And I think even at an event like this, to be exposed to all of the different possibilities is a great first step or a great next step. And I think what you do with it after an event like this is the important part.
Yeah, I think it is that it can be overwhelming. I think somebody here said that there's so much pressure. There's so much, I've got to do something. My competition already has mastered AI and they're already 10xing their organization and things like that. I think you just start somewhere. It's one of those things that you're not going to get the 1,000-mile journey in one step. You pick something that's definable, that's measurable, and then, work your way up from there. If you don't know where to go, take a step forward, think through it, and the next thing you know, you'll be able to tackle that one and tackle the next one and tackle the next one. Melissa, do you have something else?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think we just need to, like a couple of people have said, go back to first principles here. This is design, this is prototyping, this is validating, this is then, systematizing. what works, what doesn't work, failing fast. And I think, we're rapidly deploying technology across all layers of the organization. And I would say 80-90% of these people, it's the first time they've like co-worked with technology. So I would say don't try to, change the entire plane while you're flying it. Just fix a couple of seats and do the workflow of, how do I just fix this bit of the organization and get it right and keep it, and then scale out. I think pilots are good, but I think pilots are more than just deploying some technology. You've got to look at all the work streams around it and learn from that. So going back to first principles, we're redesigning our organizations here. And I think we know how to do that. We've all built successful companies. So remember what we do well and celebrate the people who are good at the things we need them to do and empower them. I think I'm hoping to leave with a positive message, because everyone knows how to build a company. We just now need to change some of our workflows. We can do it.
Well, in keeping us on time, I know we have our next presentation coming up in just a few moments. So I want to make sure, we're absolutely in very exciting times and lots of possibilities. So I want to thank everybody for joining us on this expert panel. Rob, Dave, Melissa, Brad, and for anyone that's listening in live and you're wondering, how do I reach out to any of the panelists or any of the speakers that I've heard during the event? That big orange button at the top of the site will get you connected with any of the speakers or any of the individuals on this panel or throughout the event. Coming up next, we have Thomas Aronica with Billard Genie. So I want to keep everybody on target for that next presentation. But from this end, I'd like to thank everybody for joining this panel today.
Thanks, guys. It was fun.
Thanks a lot.